We finally have some hard data with which to demonstrate and prove the decline of wokeism and DEI in American corporate culture. With 13% of DEI-related jobs having been removed, and in other words, the people fired, over the course of the last year or so. That is a rather precipitous decline, especially for people that were hired on during a hiring boom and probably have rather generous contracts, which is what we talked about in yesterday's video. Now, we will talk about this specifically because it's kind of the topic of the week, and because I've also noticed that a lot of people in the comments in the other videos have basically said, oh no, DEI and wokeism isn't going away, they're just hiding, they're going underground, they're pretending to comply, etc, etc. No. They are actually, provably, going away. Now, there are going to be cases of covert activity, absolutely, unquestionably. We are still going to see examples of DEI and wokeism for quite some time yet, because you can't remove all of these people in one swing, as I would have preferred if the 13% had a 0 attached to the end. I would prefer it if the companies were firing people with such fervent zealotry that they actually fired more people they needed, just out of sheer accident and eagerness to get them out of the building. But again, like we talked about yesterday, most of these people are probably under contract or in complicated relationships with the employer, which makes firing them rather difficult. So you are still going to see things like indeed this, which is a wonderful, also recent example, as we've got our main 3 for the Harry Potter TV show, and you know, it's not awful casting. I was almost sure that Ron would be an Indian or something because of the ginger side, but no, he's actually a ginger. Harry Potter looks pretty good, but Hermione, of course, is brown. And if any of you expected otherwise, you are a naive fool, sir, as the please race swap Hermione race row has been going for like 10 years now. There was no way she wasn't gonna get race swapped, and the simple fact that she's merely brown, which is an interesting statement to say, I will admit, that actually shows a degree of hesitance on behalf of the creators, as I mean, during the height of this, there were calls to make the entire cast diverse, including making Harry Potter an Indian. So, and especially considering Black Snape as well, but we'll touch upon this a little bit more later, so let's return to this for now. Let's begin with the 13% figure. We're not going to read the article because it's long, pointless, and largely waffling. Over the course of the last about year and 6 months or so, 13% of diversity, equity, and inclusion jobs that had any of those 3 terms, or DEI, have been removed, fired, foreclosed, gotten rid of. This is from a peak of 20,048 such jobs, and now down to 17,701. You might also be thinking, oh, that's a very small number. Only 20,000 people were working in all of these corporations? Well, that seems odd. Bear you in mind, each and every one of those is in essence a corporate manager. They're HR chiefs. Each one of these were basically ruling over entire hiring positions and departments. So if you want to see the real effect that these people had on the companies, take that number and increase it by 10 to 20, and you'll get a rough estimate. As we have seen again and again, leftists always gatekeep. They always hire more of their own and never any of their opposition, as indeed we'll see again in this article too. The 13% decline, however, is not the biggest deal. No. This is. So, having fired 13% of people is already quite a lot, but this is the important part. In 2022 and 2023, you saw an enormous peak of companies going out actively actively looking for diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. They were desperate to get people that could virtue signal for them on social media, and so they could put up posts like, "We're a good company, we care about your political nonsense." This was up to 600% increase. Absolutely enormous. They couldn't find enough people to hire. They were looking under every rock for these individuals, and now it's down to 183% of 0, the baseline. Now, that is still a fair few companies looking, but that is a decline of over 400%. That is apocalyptic, and even more so for positions directly fitting a DEI role, with over 500% decline. That is astonishing. Companies, they're not only just trying to get rid of the people they have, they're not looking for any replacements. They don't want this anymore. This is the clearest indicator. They don't want DEI and wokeism. They tried it, it didn't work, it got them backlash, it got them negativity, and it might very well give them legal consequences at long last, because these are, of course, illegal hiring practices. What is DEI? It is, we will hire you because of your skin color and your gender. There is no debate around that. Indeed, even this article brings that up. It tries to defend it, but it shows DEI roles are more diverse than non-DEI roles. Correct, because they specifically hire people on their gender and their race. That is the explicit intent of DEI. It is a racist hiring practice and a sexist hiring practice, and it is illegal. The only reason why it hasn't been pursued more vigorously is, well, the fact that the United States is a bit lazy on this, and of course there is now also further moves against this from Washington and the Trumpolophagus, although I do hope he increases the pace quite significantly as well. Now, this then is the big thing. As we talked about in yesterday's video, a lot of these people were hired during this enormous boom where they couldn't find DEI officers. There simply wasn't them. The demand outstripped the supply by an enormous margin, which means that the people that got into these roles at Disney, Amazon, Google, whatever, they could basically state their own terms. They could ask for anything in terms of salary, in terms of pensions. There was even a mention here about the person they're talking about, as an example, being given stock benefits. He was given stocks in the company to be a diversity officer. The offers must have been hilariously good. And you've also then got the various companies competing to get you. So this means the reason why the 13% number isn't even higher is because a lot of these people are going to have signed contracts for 5, 6, 7, 10 years plus, as the companies were at this peak convinced that they couldn't get enough of these people. Now, in America, it's a bit easier, as you have a lot less labor protection than over here in Europe. But in Europe, it's almost impossible to fire people, as I've talked about previously. And especially in terms of things like entertainment, because these are high-profile individuals. To return a bit to our race-swapped Severus Snape, right? Now, this is a very progressive person that was cast by people who were, in essence, hired in during the height of this fervor. This is their George Floyd stand-in. And so he cannot be replaced, even if he says shit that the author of the book actively dislikes. And J.K. Rowling herself has gone out and said that she's not going to fire him because she can't fire him. And because she can't is the big deal here, because she would. Oh, God, she would. No question about it. If she had the opportunity to fire this guy for his pro-trans views, she would. A 5-minute perusal of J.K. Rowling's Twitter timeline will make it very clear what she cares about now. It isn't HBO, it isn't Harry Potter. She couldn't give a shit about that. Straight up, she is wealthy and growing wealthier by the day. If the HBO shop utterly flops, she'll just get a check for $10-20 million in royalties. Chump change to her. If it succeeds, well, that's another $100 million to just shove into a bank vault somewhere. What she cares about is her political activism, as she is a radical feminist of the trans-exclusionary variety, of course. To put it like this, J.K. Rowling is a genuine female supremacist. She wants special privileges for women and has been actively championing for them for a very long time. She wants to deny these privileges to men, even if they decide to wear a dress. In fact, the very idea to her, the mental image of a man sullying what she, I guarantee you, view to be the superior gender, is offensive. It is the only possible explanation for why she's on such a crusade about this. And hey, you know, applause as far as I'm concerned. She's even funded legal challenges to force the UK to define woman, which worked out pretty much exactly like you think it is. And now she continues to say shit that would get anyone else cancelled. This, if anything, is going to be the opposite of the wokeism and DEI, the resurgence of feminism, but after having its ranks gutted, I'm not too worried, honestly, at all. So, what we can see from numbers like these is that, yes, wokeism is absolutely, unquestionably on the decline. It is actively being purged. They're not all just going into hiding. This isn't some secret cabal whispering to each other, laying plans, etc. These are people who saw a gravy train and leapt on it, along with political activists who saw an opportunity to further their own agenda. These are deeply selfish individuals that operate along the lines of a political doctrine designed to cause them to think in a hive mind-esque way, to embrace groupthink, and to embrace in-group preferences for their politics and out-group preferences for literally everything else. There is, however, yet again, a lot more work to be done, and it is going to take a very long time, because even if the companies wanted to fire all of them tomorrow, they legally probably can't, straight up, due to this very curve right here. The demand at the peak will have given these people enormous contracts. And the very fact that they've gotten rid of 13% of them is already enormous. So, this just goes again to hammer it home. Wokeism is on the decline. That doesn't mean we're magically going to see results tomorrow, but we are heading in the correct direction, and we should not allow ourselves to get black-pilled and permanently defensive either. We have to recognize when we are in the ascendancy, as that will necessitate us playing with an entirely different set of tools. Once we are the people in power, which we are definitely heading towards, we must purport ourselves in a different way than when we were the underdogs. The rebels cannot act like the establishment, and the establishment cannot act like rebels. That indeed was one of the reasons for the decline of DEI and wokeism, as well, we see a beautiful example here of the person that J.K. Rowling is calling a man. Biological woman, trans, broadcaster, Woman of the Year nominee, 21st century suffragette, illegal female in the most transphobic country in Europe, England. This woman, because we're on YouTube, is a part of the aristocracy. She is granted greater legal protection than other members of the country. She is given special legal privileges to, for example, impart harsher punishments upon anyone who might wrong her via hate speech laws. Or hate crime laws, more correctly. She is able to punish people's language via hate speech laws, and yet she still goes, "I'm oppressed." Again, this doesn't fly with people. Normal people look at that and go, if you're oppressed, then what the fuck am I? And we must not fall in the same trap, which is a point I have reiterated quite vociferously and stridently over the course of the last months, and I suspect will continue to do so for a while yet. But for now, we should just take the W and be happy, for once, as we have every reason to be. Until next time, I've been Arch, thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.